Howdy, homies. Welcome back to Dummy TCG. I'm Sid, and today we're going to be talking about draft. Draft is one of my favorite ways to play trading card games. It's great for new players because it gives you a chance to play the game while building a collection. It's great for older players because it's just one of the most skill testing and fun things that you can do. It adds a new strategic and tactical layer to the game that you wouldn't normally get playing a constructed format. Draft is a sweet way to meet new players. Draft pods tend to be, 8 players, and you may find that you end up playing against more different opponents in an 8 player draft pod than you would in, say, like an 8 player constructed pod. There's all different kinds of ways that you can draft whenever you are sitting down. One great way for beginners to start off in this game of flesh and blood is just draft the hero that you prefer the best. This is what's known as force drafting or drafting with a preference. Sometimes you might pass a really good card in a hero that you're not really that comfortable playing, say like an Arcane Rising draft. Wizard is a really super tough class to play. Starts at 5 less life, has a lot of playing on your opponent's turn. It's very skill intensive hero type. So newer players may want to stay away from that and maybe lean more into the Ranger or the Mechnologist is one of the really good ones. But that's a good reason to draft with preferences. And it's not just for new players, very highly skilled players. Once they've learned what the meta game and the best decks and the best commons are, may end up drafting with preferences for most of the format once they've figured out what is good. The way you find out is what is good is kind of the way I like to draft, which is known as drafting the hard way or staying open. This means that you just open the pack, not really with any direction in mind. Some sets you may take like generics that are better than some class specific cards because maybe they're role players that wouldn't go well. Obviously, you can't play them, in a different hero, but maybe they just wouldn't go well in that hero if you don't draft like a super focused deck. If someone passing to you happens to be in the hero that you're in, it's just gonna make it to where some of these more powerful cards, a good example of this also from Arcane Rising would be like Arknight Ascendancy. It's a super bomb card, but if you're not heavy into the Rune Blade and making lots of Rune Chant, it can be a little difficult to cast at 6 resources. So I'm not saying that you'd ever want to pass that card, but maybe you would, and try and take a generic. But staying open often means taking that Arknight Ascendancy on the off chance that it looks like the Rune Blade would be open. And maybe after that you take, say, like a maximum velocity or something good in a Mechnologist. And you may take, your first couple of picks from all different heroes before you really see what's open and can lock in a deck. The problem with this is that waffling too long, you could end up with some cracked baubles in your deck, and nobody wants that, right? So, it's important probably about halfway through pack 1 or at the beginning of pack 2 in a draft to kind of know what direction you want to be going in and be able to know what's open. And that's why it's, called drafting the hard way, because it's very easy to train wreck a draft by not being able to commit early enough. So now that I've gone over the different types of ways that you can approach draft, let me go a little bit over the different types of drafts you can do. most people that have done a draft before have probably done a pod draft. It's the most normal competitive way to play a draft where you usually have an even number of people, hopefully. Eight is usually a good number to start with. That makes the Swiss pairings, like the round robin kind of stuff, a little bit easier and get more games in that way. But besides pod drafting, say, you don't have eight or, you know, there's other ways to draft other than just pod drafting. One common way that you may see a lot in the very competitive scenes is a team draft. The reason I say very competitive is because team draft tends to be how the final bracket of a very competitive team sealed event would end up. Like your top eight teams would then be in team drafts, or maybe it's even like the top four teams. But the way a team draft works is very similar to a pod draft. Everybody sits at a table. It'll be six instead of eight because the teams are teams of three, and each player gets three boosters like normal. And then you sit next to your opponents. So this adds an extra tactical layer to the draft process where you're going to end up playing against something that you pass. So you're going to want to not pass cards that, even though aren't going to be great for your deck, are going to be great for your opponent's deck. You don't want to set your team up for failure like that. Team draft, besides being really competitive, is also like a really cool social way to draft. You sit next to your teammates, you're allowed to talk to each other about what decisions to go over, what the best plays are. Sometimes it's great to have another set of eyes on a board state, and they may see something you don't, and it can lead to your team being successful. It's a lot of fun. So I definitely recommend checking out Team Draft if you only have six to draft. It doesn't have to be super competitive. Maybe at your Armory events, you could try out what I call the Armory Team Draft, where your team can actually share their equipment pool. Now, your action cards, instants, reactions, and stuff like that, you can't share. Like, you have to keep those in your sideboard. But say there comes a decision where you can hate draft or take a late piece of equipment that might be good for one of your teammates. That adds a whole other tactical layer and, a level of fun to the team draft experience. So maybe try that out at your next Armory event. But, say you don't feel comfortable for whatever reason sitting down at a table close to people and passing packs around. That's understandable. There's a Rochester Draft. And the way that works is a bunch of people gather around the table, not too close if you don't want to be. And each player will take a turn picking a card from pack. You basically lay the pack out for all the players to see, and then you decide who goes first and in what order you go. And so the way a Rochester Draft would work is the first player would get the first pick of the card, and it would go all the way to, you'll have 8 or 6 or something like that. And then that sixth player that picked the sixth card will actually then pick the seventh card, and then it'll go back to the starting player who picked the first card, ended up picking like the last card in the pack or something like that. That's to make sure that, you don't end up with mono bombs. It's not super great advantage to go first sometimes because it's harder to put a deck together. People are going to see what you're trying to do. Say you do pick that super sweet bomb and they're like, oh man, I could try to cut them off from that hero and they can't play that. So that adds another strategic layer to the draft process. Rochester drafts are very, very long though. So if you really like the drafting process more than even the gaming process, Rochester Draft might be right for you. But say you don't even have that many people. A lot of people are just playing this game at home and don't have a big place to draft or even people to draft with. It's maybe just you and your buddy or your significant other or your child or whoever you end up playing Flesh and Blood with. The younger kids, some of the cards can be kind of scary. So maybe not have those children playing, but If that's the case, there's awesome a two-player draft format known as Winchester Draft. This is actually one of my personal favorites. Um, what you do is you crack an even number of packs. Each player gets an equal number of cards, and you shuffle them all together, and then you decide who's going to go first drafting, and you take the top four cards of your stack and put them in four separate piles, and then you pick one of the piles. You put that into your card pool, and then the next player will flip over the next four, or the top four of theirs, and some of the piles will get really big with a bunch of medium cards. The bombs are going to get snapped up pretty fast. You may end up playing some crack bobbles in this one, I'm not gonna lie. But if that's not what you want to do, you can actually make the deck stronger and more focused by adding more packs. I recommend starting somewhere around 6, but if you do a Rochester or a Winchester draft with 12 packs, not only are you going to have like a really long and fun draft experience and awesome pool at the end, you'll be able to make a really sweet deck too. So yeah, those are some of the ways to draft, and also just different ways to approach draft. Drafting is friggin' awesome. Flesh and Blood's awesome. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for tuning into this video today. And if you're interested in drafting, and we will be drafting safely, give me an email when the new set comes out in Unlimited, that being Monarch. We're going to be trying to get a draft together, and it'll either be super cheap, or if you don't want to keep the cards, it'll be free. You can just give me the cards back when we're done with the draft. Hit me up at dummytcg@gmail.com. You can also follow me at Twitter at dummytcg. Peace out, y'all, and have a great night.